I was living in a studio apartment in Madison, eating ramen 3 times a day, when I saw the job posting. Front desk clerk at the Old Baraboo Inn. $18 an hour, room and board included. Immediate start. I'd been out of work for 2 months since the grocery store I worked at closed down. My landlord had already taped an eviction notice to my door. I didn't have the luxury of being picky. The drive to Baraboo took about 40 minutes through stretches of highway, where the farmland looked like it hadn't changed since the 50s. The inn sat on the outskirts of town, just past the old Owl Ringling Theater, a Victorian brick building with a sagging porch and windows that reflected the gray March sky like dead eyes. I parked my Subaru out front and walked in. Earl Novak, the manager, was exactly what you'd expect from a place like this. 70s, suspenders, thick glasses, the kind of guy who probably still balanced his checkbook by hand. He hired me on the spot. Didn't ask for references. Didn't seem to care that my last job was stocking shelves. He just handed me a brass key to room 12 on the second floor and said I started tomorrow at 3 p.m. "One thing," he said as I was leaving, "guests here value their privacy. Don't ask questions. Don't pry. Just check them in, check them out, and mind your business." He said it with this weird intensity, like he was warning me about something specific. I should have pressed him on it. I didn't. The guests at the Old Baraboo Inn never complained, which should have been my first warning sign. In 3 weeks of working the front desk, I'd checked in maybe 40 people, and not a single one had asked about the Wi-Fi password, complained about noise, or requested extra towels. They'd smile, take their keys, go to their rooms, and I wouldn't see them again until checkout. They were always polite, always quiet, and something about them reminded me of actors in an old movie. Too formal, too careful, like they were performing the role of hotel guest rather than actually being one. On my 23rd day, a woman checked in who was different. She was young, maybe mid-20s, and she looked nervous. She kept glancing around the lobby like she was expecting someone to jump out at her. When I gave her the key to room 8, she grabbed my hand and said, "What day is it?" I told her it was Thursday, March 14th, 2024. She started crying. "That's impossible," she said. "I checked into a hotel in Baraboo 3 days ago. It was March 11th, 2019. I went to sleep in my room and woke up in this bed this morning, and everything looks old and wrong. And the man who checked me in is gone, and you're here instead, and..." She stopped talking abruptly, her eyes going distant and glassy. Then she smiled that too polite smile, took her key, and walked to her room like nothing had happened. She checked out the next morning, still smiling, and I never saw her again. That night, Earl left me a note under my door. The note was typed on an old typewriter, the letters uneven and smudged. Tyler dash, dash, some things you need to know about working nights here. Follow these exactly. Your life depends on it. If a guest asks you what year it is, tell them you don't know. Do not give them a date. The grandfather clock in the lobby will sometimes run backward. Do not try to fix it or wind it. Let it be. Room 14 has been empty since 1987. If someone tries to check into that room, tell them it's undergoing maintenance. Do not give them a key. If you hear children laughing on the 3rd floor after midnight, ignore it. There are no children staying here. Every night at 3:47 a.m., someone will knock on the front desk window from outside. Do not look. Do not respond. It will stop after the 7th knock. Earl didn't leave a signature. I read the note 3 times, sitting on the edge of my bed in room 12, listening to the radiator clank and hiss. Part of me wanted to laugh it off. Some kind of hazing thing for new employees, maybe. But I kept thinking about that woman who'd cried when I told her the date. The way her face had gone blank mid-sentence, like someone had flipped a switch in her brain. I didn't sleep much that night. My next shift started at 3 p.m. on Friday. Earl wasn't around. His truck wasn't in the lot, and the office behind the front desk was dark. I made coffee in the small kitchen off the lobby, the kind of bitter gas station blend that tasted like burnt rubber, and settled in at the desk with a Stephen King paperback I'd found in a drawer. The lobby was quiet. Too quiet, like Earl had said. The grandfather clock near the staircase ticked steadily, its brass pendulum swinging in the dim afternoon light filtering through the windows. I checked my phone. Still had service, which was something. I texted my friend Jamie back in Madison. New job is weird, but paying rent, so whatever. Around 5 p.m., an older couple checked in. The Dietrichs, from Milwaukee. They had that same strange formality all the other guests had. Stiff smiles, rehearsed pleasantries. When I handed them the key to room 6, the man looked at me and said, "What year is it?" My hand froze halfway to the key rack. Rule number 1. I swallowed. I don't know. The woman's smile didn't change. Of course, thank you. They took their key and went upstairs, moving in perfect sync like dancers who'd practiced the same routine for years. I checked the time on my phone. 5:14 p.m. Then I looked at the grandfather clock. It read 5:14 p.m. too. I watched it for a full minute. The second hand ticked forward. Normal. I went back to my book, but the words wouldn't stick. I kept reading the same paragraph over and over. At 7:30 p.m. I heard it. Faint at first, then louder. Children laughing, high-pitched, gleeful, the kind of sound you'd hear at a playground. It was coming from upstairs, from the 3rd floor. I looked at the guest registry. No families checked in, no kids at all. Just the Dietrichs, a man in room 3 and a woman in room 9. All adults, all alone. The laughter continued, echoing down the stairwell. I stood up, then sat back down. Rule number 4, ignore it. There are no children staying here. But what if there were kids up there? What if some family had checked in when I wasn't looking, and their kids were just playing in the hallway? I'd look like an idiot if I ignored actual children who needed something. I walked to the base of the stairs and looked up. The 3rd floor hallway was dark except for a single wall sconce that flickered like a candle flame. The laughter stopped abruptly. In the silence that followed, I heard something else. Footsteps. Small footsteps. Running. Then nothing. I went back to the desk. The grandfather clock read 7:30 p.m. I checked my phone. It read 7:28 p.m. I stared at both for a long moment. Then I watched. The clock's second hand ticked backward, once, twice, 3 times. Then it started moving forward again, like nothing had happened. Rule number 2. Do not try to fix it or wind it. Let it be. I sat at that desk until midnight. My coffee going cold, watching the clock run backward and forward at random intervals. Sometimes it would jump ahead 5 minutes. Sometimes it would tick backward for 30 seconds, then correct itself. My phone kept the right time. The clock did whatever it wanted. At 12:15 a.m., I heard the first desk come downstairs. The woman from room 9. She walked past the desk without looking at me, went out the front door, and stood in the parking lot staring at the sky. She stood there for 20 minutes. Then she came back inside, walked upstairs, and I heard her door close. I checked the registry again. Her name was listed as Guest 9. No actual name. Just Guest 9. That's when I noticed something else. Every guest in the registry was listed the same way. Guest 3. Guest 6. Guest 14. Wait. Guest 14. Room 14 has been empty since 1987, but someone was listed there. I flipped through the registry pages, my hands shaking slightly. Every entry looked the same. Guest 3, Guest 6, Guest 9, Guest 14. The handwriting changed between pages, like different people had made the entries over the years, but the format never varied. No names, no addresses, no phone numbers, just room numbers and the word guest. I pulled out my phone and called Earl. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. His voice on the recording sounded younger than the man I'd met, almost energetic. "You've reached Earl Novak, leave a message." "Hey, it's Tyler. I'm at the desk and I have some questions about the registry. Also, there's someone listed in room 14, but you said..." I stopped. The lobby had gone completely silent. The clock wasn't ticking. The radiator wasn't clanking. Even the ambient hum of the building had disappeared. I lowered my phone and listened. Nothing. Then, from somewhere above me, I heard a door open and close. Footsteps in the hallway. Someone was walking on the second floor, their steps slow and measured. They stopped directly above my head. I stared at the ceiling and waited. After maybe 30 seconds, the footsteps continued, moving toward the stairs. A man appeared at the landing. He was maybe 60, wearing a suit that looked like it came from a J.C. Penney catalog circa 1995. Boxy shoulders, wide lapels. His face had that same waxy quality all the other guests had, like he was made of something that wasn't quite skin. He walked down the stairs with careful precision, each step landing in exactly the same spot on each tread. He stopped at the desk. "I'd like to check out of room 14. My mouth went dry. "Rule number 3. Room 14 has been empty since 1987. I looked at the registry. Guest 14 was right there in Earl's handwriting, checked in March 8th, 2024. 6 days ago. Of course. Let me just..." I fumbled with the keyboard, trying to remember how Earl had shown me the checkout process. The computer was old, running some ancient DOS-based system that probably hadn't been updated since the 90s. "What's your name?" I asked, pulling up the checkout screen. "I don't have one anymore," he said. His voice was flat, affectless. "I forgot it." I stopped typing. "What do you mean you forgot it?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a Wisconsin driver's license. He set it on the desk and slid it toward me. The photo showed the same man, but younger, healthier. The name read, Thomas Hennig, address in Portage. Date of birth, April 3rd, 1951. Issue date, January 15th, 1987. "I checked in here on January 18th, 1987, he said. "I was visiting my daughter in Baraboo. She lived on Oak Street. I was only supposed to stay one night." He paused, his eyes focusing on something I couldn't see. "I went to sleep in room 14. When I woke up, I looked outside and the snow was gone. My car was different. Everything was different. I went back to sleep. When I woke up again, more time had passed. I stopped trying to wake up after a while. I stared at the license. 1987. 37 years ago. "You've been here for 37 years? "I don't know how long it's been," he said. "Time doesn't work right on the second floor. Sometimes I wake up and it's the same day. Sometimes it's been weeks. The clock in my room runs backwards sometimes. The guests in the other rooms, I see them in the hallway, but they never talk to me. They never talk to each other. We just walk past like strangers." If you like the stories, please hype the videos from a button like this just above the comment section. It helps the videos to get more reach and perform well. It would take just a few seconds and cost nothing, but would help the channel grow even faster. Thank you. I thought about the woman who'd grabbed my hand. March 11th, 2019. 5 years missing from her life, and she didn't even know where they went. "Why are you checking out now?" I asked. He looked at me with those dead, waxy eyes. "Because you're new. Because you don't look like the other one yet. Because maybe you can still hear me." He leaned forward. "Get out of here. Quit this job. Leave tonight. Don't let this place keep you." Before I could respond, he straightened up, and his expression went blank. That same glassy smile all the other guests wore. "Thank you for your hospitality," he said in that formal, rehearsed tone. He turned and walked toward the front door. "Wait," I said, but he was already outside, walking across the parking lot toward Highway 12. I watched him through the window until he disappeared into the darkness beyond the lot lights. I looked down at the license still sitting on the desk. Thomas Hennig. I pulled out my phone and Googled his name. The first result was an obituary from the Baraboo News-Republic, dated March 3rd, 2024. Thomas Hennig, 72, of Portage, passed away peacefully in his sleep at his home. Survived by daughter Jennifer Hennig Paulson of Baraboo, 2 grandchildren. Services held at Redland Funeral Home. I read it 3 times. He died 2 weeks ago, but he'd just walked out of this building. I'd touched his driver's license. I'd heard him talk about his daughter on Oak Street. My phone buzzed. A text from Earl. "Don't call me during your shift. Handle it yourself." I typed back, "A dead man just checked out of room 14. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then, "Did you give him a key?" "No. He already had one." "Good. Lock the door to room 14. Key is in the desk drawer labeled maintenance. Do it now." I found the key ring in the drawer. Old brass keys with room numbers etched into them. Number 14 was there. Hanging separate from the others, I took the stairs up to the 2nd floor, my legs feeling like concrete. The hallway was lit by those same flickering wall sconces, casting shadows that seemed to move wrong. I counted doors. Room 12, where I slept. Room 13, then room 14 at the end of the hall. The door was already open. I stood in the hallway, the key heavy in my hand, and looked inside. The room was furnished like all the others. Queen bed with a floral comforter, dresser, nightstand with a lamp. But everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. The kind of dust that accumulates over years, decades. On the nightstand was a digital clock. The numbers flickered and changed. 2:47 a.m., then 11:33 p.m., then 6:15 a.m., then backward to 3:22 a.m. Over and over, random times, never staying still. I stepped inside. The air was colder than the hallway, and it smelled wrong. Not like rot or mold, but like nothing. Like the absence of smell. My footsteps left prints in the dust on the floor. I walked to the window and looked out. The parking lot was empty except for my Subaru. But beyond the lot, where Highway 12 should have been, there was nothing. Just darkness. Not the darkness of night, but the darkness of void. Like someone had erased that part of the world. I heard a sound behind me and spun around. A little girl stood in the doorway, maybe 7 years old, wearing a white nightgown. She had dark hair and pale skin, and eyes that didn't blink. "Are you lost?" she asked. Her voice echoed, like it was coming from far away. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. She tilted her head. "You should leave before you forget your name too." Then she turned and walked down the hallway, her bare feet silent on the carpet. I ran out of that room, slammed the door, locked it with shaking hands, and didn't stop moving until I was back at the front desk. The grandfather clock read 3:47 a.m. I'd only been upstairs for 10 minutes. My phone said 1:23 a.m. Then I heard it. A knock on the front window. Slow. Measured. Rule number 5. The knock came again. Slow. Hollow. Like knuckles on glass. I kept my eyes on the computer screen, on the blinking cursor in the checkout field where Thomas Hennig's name should have been. The note had been specific. Do not look. Do not respond. A third knock. Louder this time. I focused on my breathing. In through my nose, out through my mouth. My dad had taught me that when I was a kid and got anxious before baseball games. Funny what your brain reaches for when you're terrified. Fourth knock. The window rattled slightly in its frame. I counted the tiles on the floor behind the desk. 12 across, 8 deep, 96 tiles total. One of them had a crack running diagonally from corner to corner. Fifth knock. Something about it sounded wrong. Not like a hand anymore. Like something harder. Colder. I picked up my phone and texted Janie. You ever feel like you made a huge mistake? She replied immediately. Constantly. You okay? Sixth knock. The glass flexed inward slightly, bowing like something was pressing against it with tremendous weight. I watched it from the corner of my eye, keeping my face turned toward the computer. Yeah, I typed back. Just weird night shift stuff. Seventh knock. Then silence. I waited for 30 seconds, counting them off in my head, before I let myself look at the window. Nothing there. Just the parking lot, the streetlight near Highway 12, my Subaru sitting under it with one taillight out. Everything normal, everything fine. The grandfather clock ticked steadily. 3:52 a.m. My phone agreed. For once, they matched. I stood up and walked to the window, pressing my face close to the glass. No footprints in the dirt below the window. No marks on the glass. Nothing to suggest anyone had been standing there at all. But there was something else. Something I hadn't noticed before. In the reflection of the glass, I could see the lobby behind me. The desk, the stairs, the grandfather clock. But I could also see something that wasn't there when I turned around. A figure standing at the top of the stairs. Just standing there, watching. I spun around. The stairs were empty. I looked back at the window. The reflection showed the figure taking one step down, then another. I didn't look at the stairs. I kept my eyes on the reflection, watching it descend step by step, getting closer. When it reached the bottom, it walked toward the desk, toward me. In the reflection, I could see it clearly now. A man in an old suit, his face in shadow, moving with that same careful precision all the other guests had. He stopped right behind where I was standing. In the reflection, he reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder. I felt nothing. No pressure. No touch. But in the glass, I watched his fingers sink into my jacket like I was made of water. Then he leaned close to my reflected ear and whispered something I couldn't hear. His mouth moved, forming words, but no sound reached me. He stepped back, turned, and walked toward the front door. In the reflection, he opened it and left. When I finally turned around, the lobby was still empty. The front door was still closed. I went back to the desk and sat down hard, my hands shaking. The coffee I'd made hours ago was stone cold. I drank it anyway, needing something to do with my hands, something normal and mundane to ground myself. The computer screen had changed. Where Thomas Hennig's checkout should have been, there was just an error message. Guest 14 has no checkout bait. I closed the program and opened it again. Same message. I tried to delete the entry entirely, but the system wouldn't let me. Guest 14 was permanent, locked in the registry like a stain that wouldn't wash out. My phone buzzed. Earl again. You followed the rules? Yes. Good. You'll work Saturday and Sunday too. Extra pay. $25 an hour. I should have said no. Should have told him I was done, that I'd find another job, that no amount of money was worth this. But my bank account had $147 in it. My car needed new brakes. My student loans were 3 months behind. Okay, I typed. I spent the rest of my shift reading old newspapers I'd found in the office. The Baraboo News Republic, dating back to the 80s. I was looking for something about the inn, about room 14, about anything that might explain what was happening here. Most of it was mundane, small-town news, city council meetings, high school sports, obituaries. Then, in a paper from June 1987, I found a small article on page 3. Lightning strike damages historic inn. The Old Baraboo Inn sustained significant damage early Tuesday morning when a lightning bolt struck the building during a severe thunderstorm. Owner Harold Metzger reported that the strike hit the roof above the second floor, causing electrical damage and a small fire that was quickly contained by the Baraboo Fire Department. No guests were injured, though Metzger noted that several guests reported their watches and clocks stopped working at the moment of the strike. Strangest thing I ever saw, Metzger said. Every clock in the building froze at exactly 3:47 a.m. The inn will remain open during repairs. 3:47 a.m. The time on the note. The time of the knocking. I kept reading. 2 pages later, another article. Local man missing. After checking into inn, Thomas Hennig, 36, of Portage, was last seen checking into the Old Baraboo Inn on January 18th. His car was found in the inn's parking lot 3 days later, but Hennig has not been seen since. Anyone with information should contact the Baraboo Police Department. I checked the date. January 1987. 6 months before the lightning strike. I pulled out more papers, spreading them across the desk, looking for anything else. I found 3 more articles over the next 2 years. A woman from Janesville who disappeared after staying at the inn. A couple from Green Bay, whose car was found but who were never seen again. A college student from UW-Madison who checked in and never checked out. All of them before the lightning strike. All of them still missing. But then, after June 1987, the article stopped. No more missing persons. No more disappearances. Just silence. The clock struck 6 a.m. Sunrise started bleeding through the windows, gray and weak. I heard movement upstairs. Guests waking up, getting ready for checkout. The Dietrichs came down first, then the man from room 3, then the woman from room 9. They all checked out with those same waxy smiles, those same formal pleasantries, and drove away in cars that looked too clean, too perfect, like they'd just rolled off the lot. Earl showed up at 7. He looked older in the morning light, tired in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. "You did good," he said, taking off his coat. "Not everyone makes it through the first night." What happens to the ones who don't? He poured himself coffee from the pot I'd made, took a sip, made a face. "They become guests," he said, "permanent ones." "Thomas Hennig came back," I said. "He checked out. He walked right out the front door." Earl's hand froze halfway through his mouth. Coffee sloshed over the rim of his cup. "When?" "Around midnight. He talked to me, told me to quit. Then he just left." Earl set down his cup and walked to the window, looking out at the empty parking lot. "That's not possible. Guest 14 has never left, not in 37 years. They don't just walk away. They don't remember how." "I saw him," I said. "I have his driver's license right here." I reached for where I'd left it on the desk. The license was gone, In its place was a faded Polaroid photograph. It showed the inn's lobby, this same lobby, but different, older. The furniture was different. The wallpaper was different. In the photo, a man stood at the desk. Even in the faded colors, I recognized him. Thomas Hennig, looking exactly as he had last night. But behind him, barely visible in the shadows at the top of the stairs, was another figure. Someone in a front desk uniform. Someone who looked exactly like Earl. I held up the photo. When was this taken? Earl took it from my hands, studied it for a long moment, then handed it back. January 18th, 1987, he said quietly. That was my first night working here. I was 23 years old. I checked Thomas Hennig into room 14 myself. That was 37 years ago. Yes, you should be 60. I should be, Earl agreed. He smiled, and for the first time I saw that same waxy quality in his skin, that same formal distance in his eyes. But time doesn't work right here. Not since the lightning strike. Not since... He stopped himself. Go get some sleep. You're back on shift at 3 p.m. I went upstairs to room 12, but I didn't sleep. I lay on the bed, still in my clothes, staring at the ceiling and listening to the inn settle around me. Footsteps in the hallway, doors opening and closing, water running in pipes, normal sounds, ordinary sounds. But underneath them, if I listened carefully, I could hear something else. A ticking. Not from my room, but from somewhere above me. From the third floor. From somewhere I hadn't been yet. Somewhere the children's laughter had come from. I didn't go to the third floor that day. I should have. Should have investigated while I had sunlight and some semblance of courage. Instead, I drove into town, parked on Broadway Street, and walked past the shuttered storefronts, trying to convince myself I was overthinking everything. Baraboo in daylight looked almost aggressively normal. The kind of small Wisconsin town where people still left their doors unlocked and everyone knew everyone else's business. I stopped at the public library, a brick building near the courthouse. The librarian, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a beaded chain, smiled when I walked in. Help you find something. I'm looking for information about the Old Baraboo Inn, I said. Any historical records, old newspapers, anything like that. Her smile tightened slightly. You working there? Front desk. Started a few weeks ago. She studied me for a moment, then nodded toward a computer terminal. Microfilm archives are all digitized now. Search Old Baraboo Inn, and you'll get everything we have. I'll be at the desk if you need help. She paused. Word of advice? Don't work the night shift too long. People who do tend to change. Change how? But she'd already turned away, reshelving books with her back to me. I spent 2 hours going through archives. The inn had been built in 1924 by Harold Metzger's grandfather, back when Baraboo was still flush with circus money. The Ringling Brothers had their winter headquarters here until they moved to Sarasota. The building had served as temporary housing for circus performers between seasons. Acrobats, magicians, animal trainers, people who lived transient lives, never staying in one place too long. In 1963, a stage magician named Theodore Klein died in room 14. Heart attack, according to the death certificate I found. But there was a note in the police report, handwritten in the margin. Deceased's personal effects included unusual theatrical equipment, clock mechanism of unknown origin, possibly part of stage illusion. Items stored in building attic per family request. Theodore Klein. I wrote the name down. Then I searched for more about him. Found an advertisement from 1961 in the Baraboo News Republic. The amazing Theodore and his time-bending clock. See the past. glimpse the future, witness the impossible. One night only at the Au Ringling Theater. The ad showed a drawing of an ornate clock with multiple faces, each showing a different time. Beneath it, featuring an authentic Ringling stage prop from the 1920s, marvel as Theodore manipulates time itself before your very eyes. I took photos of everything with my phone, then went back to the librarian. "Did you know Theodore Klein?" I asked. Her expression went carefully neutral. "Before my time. But my mother saw his show once. Said it was the most disturbing thing she ever witnessed. People in the audience claimed they lost time during the performance. Would sit down for an hour-long show and walk out 3 hours later, swearing only minutes had passed. The theater stopped booking him after that." "What happened to his equipment?" "I assume it's still at the inn." "That's where he died. His family never came to collect his things." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Listen, that place has been wrong since the Ringling days. Maybe before. But something happened in 1987 that made it worse. I had a cousin who worked there. Normal kid, played football, had a girlfriend, worked the front desk to save up for college. After 6 months, he stopped talking to anyone. Just stared at nothing. Eventually, he stopped showing up to family dinners. We'd drive by the inn and see him through the windows, working at that desk. But when we called, he wouldn't answer. When we went inside, he'd act like he didn't know us." She straightened up. "He's still there, still working. Name's Dennis Kruger. You'll probably meet him if you haven't already." I thought about Earl, about how he should be 60 but barely looked 40, about how Thomas Hennig had walked around for 37 years after checking in, forgetting his own name. "Thank you," I said. I drove back to the inn. My shift didn't start for another 2 hours, but I needed to see something. Needed to check the attic before I lost my nerve. The attic access was a pull-down ladder in the 3rd-floor hallway. I'd noticed it my first week, but hadn't thought much about it. Now, standing in the dim corridor, I pulled the cord and felt the ladder unfold with a rusty creak. The attic was smaller than I expected. The ceiling slanted under the roof beams. It smelled like old wood and dust and something else. Ozone, maybe. Like the air before a thunderstorm. Light filtered through a small round window at the far end, illuminating shapes covered with yellowed sheets. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate between boxes and furniture. Old guest registers dating back to the 20s, chairs with broken legs, a dresser with a cracked mirror. And there, in the corner beneath the window, something large covered with a canvas tarp. I pulled the tarp away. It was a clock, but not like any clock I'd ever seen. It stood maybe 6 feet tall, made of dark wood with brass fittings, and it had 7 faces arranged in a circle around the central mechanism. Each face showed a different time. Each ticked at a different speed. Some ran forward, some ran backward. One wasn't moving at all, frozen at 3:47. The central mechanism was exposed, a maze of gears and springs and things that didn't look like clock parts at all. There were symbols etched into the metal that I didn't recognize, arrangements of lines and circles that hurt to look at directly. The whole thing hummed very quietly, a sound I felt in my teeth more than heard. A brass plate on the base read, "Property of Ringling Brothers Circus, Stage Illusion Apparatus, Theodore Klein, Proprietor, 1922. I reached out to touch it, then stopped myself. Even standing this close made my watch feel wrong on my wrist. I looked down at it. The second hand was ticking backward. Something moved behind me. I spun around, shining my light across the attic. Nothing there. Just boxes and furniture and shadows. But I'd heard something. Footsteps. Small footsteps. Hello? My voice came out hoarse. A giggle, high and bright, coming from behind a stack of boxes near the ladder. I moved toward it, my phone light cutting through the darkness. Is someone there? The giggle came again, but from a different direction now. Behind me, near the clock. I turned. A little girl stood next to the clock, the same one I'd seen in room 14's doorway. White nightgown, dark hair. She was touching one of the clock faces, her small fingers tracing the hour hand as it ticked backward. "You shouldn't be up here," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "This isn't safe." She looked at me with those unblinking eyes. "It's not a clock," she said. "It's a door." A door to what? To all the times that could have been, all the times that might still be. She pressed her palm flat against the central clock face, the one frozen at 3:47. The lightning opened it. Now people fall through. They fall through time and can't find their way back. "What's your name?" "I don't remember. I've been here so long I forgot." She tilted her head. "Do you know what day it is?" "It's Saturday, March 16th, 2024. She smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "I checked in with my parents on July 4th, 1985. We were on vacation. I was 7 years old. My room was on the 3rd floor. I could hear the fireworks from my window." Her smile faded. "I don't know how old I am now. I stopped counting." Behind her, the clock's gears suddenly shifted. All 7 faces began spinning rapidly, hands blurring. The humming grew louder, vibrating the floorboards beneath my feet. My phone screen glitched, the time jumping between different hours, different days. 3:47 p.m., 11:22 a.m., 8:06 p.m., 3:47 a.m., always coming back to 3:47. The little girl stepped away from the clock. "It wants to be wound," she said. "It's been running down since 1987. When it stops completely, everyone trapped here will be gone forever, erased, like we never existed at all." She looked at me with those ancient, tired eyes. "Are you going to help us?" Before I could answer, the clock stopped. All 7 faces, all the gears, complete silence. The attic went dark. My phone light died. I stood in absolute blackness, feeling the floorboards tilt beneath me like the world had shifted sideways. Then, from downstairs, I heard the grandfather clock in the lobby strike. 3 times. A pause. Then 47 more times in rapid succession. Light returned gradually, like someone slowly turning up a dimmer switch. The little girl was gone. I was alone in the attic with the silent clock and my phone, which now showed a black screen with 1 line of text. "Guest 14 has no checkout date." I climbed down the ladder, my hands slipping on the rungs. By the time I reached the 3rd floor hallway, I could hear voices downstairs. Earl calling my name. "Tyler, you up here? Your shift started 10 minutes ago." I looked at my watch. It was 3:10 p.m. I'd been in the attic for less than 20 minutes by my count, but somehow it was already time for my shift. I went downstairs, past Earl's concerned expression, and took my place at the desk. The grandfather clock in the lobby had stopped. All 3 hands pointed straight up, midnight, or noon. Impossible to tell which. "Clock's broken," Earl said, following my gaze. "Stopped right at 3. Haven't seen that happen before." I wanted to tell him about the attic, about Theodore Klein's clock and the little girl and what she'd said about everyone being erased. But when I opened my mouth, different words came out. Just a normal day, I heard myself say. Nothing unusual. Earl nodded slowly. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or pity. Yeah, he said quietly. Just normal. That's what we all say eventually. He left, and I was alone with the silent clock and the knowledge that something in the attic was winding down. And when it stopped completely, we'd all disappear like we'd never been here at all. A young couple walked through the door, pulling wheeled suitcases behind them. "Hi," the woman said, smiling that strange, formal smile. "We'd like to check in." I pulled up the registry on the computer. Of course, welcome to the Old Baraboo Inn. The couple's names were listed in the registry as Guest 7 and Guest 8. I didn't ask for their real names, didn't ask where they were from, or why they'd chosen this particular inn. On this particular night, I just handed them keys and watched them walk upstairs with that same careful synchronization all the guests had, their footsteps perfectly aligned. My shift blurred. That's the best word for it. Minutes stretched and compressed like taffy, and I'd check my phone to find an hour had passed when I'd only blinked, or I'd wash my hands in the bathroom and come back to find only 30 seconds had elapsed when it felt like I'd been gone for 10 minutes. The grandfather clock stayed frozen at 3 o'clock, its hands refusing to move no matter how many times I checked. Around 8 p.m., or what my phone claimed was 8 p.m., Earl came back. He had a manila folder under his arm and that same tired, defeated look I'd seen that morning. "We need to talk," he said, setting the folder on the desk. "About what you found in the attic." "How did you—" "I know everything that happens in this building. Eventually." He opened the folder. Inside were dozens of Polaroid photographs, all showing the same thing. The 7-faced clock in the attic, taken from different angles and at different times. In some photos, the clock faces showed different times. In others, they were all frozen at 3:47. I've been documenting it for 37 years, trying to understand it, trying to figure out how to stop it. The little girl said it's winding down. That when it stops, everyone trapped here will be erased. Earl nodded. I know. I felt it happening. Every year I remember less. Less about my life before. Less about my family. I had a wife once, I think. Maybe kids. But when I try to picture their faces, there's nothing there. Just empty space where memories should be. He pulled out one particular photo. The clock with all 7 faces perfectly aligned at 3:47. This was taken the night of the lightning strike, June 18th, 1987. I was working the desk when it happened. The whole building lit up like daylight. I heard this sound, like gears grinding, and then nothing. Just silence. And when I looked at the grandfather clock, it had stopped. Same as it is now. Theodore Klein's clock is what's doing this, I said. It's been running since the 20s, manipulating time somehow, and the lightning strike supercharged it. Opened it, the girl said. Made it into a door. A door to where? To all the times that could have been. All the moments that got lost or trapped or forgotten. I thought about Thomas Hennig, about the little girl, about all the guests who checked in and never really checked out. It's not just trapping people. It's trapping their time, the hours and days and years they're losing. It's all pooling here, in this building, getting stuck like water behind the dam. Earl sat down in the chair beside the desk. He looked older now, more worn down. I've tried everything. I disconnected the power to the 3rd floor, thinking maybe it ran on electricity. Nothing changed. I tried moving it, but I can't get within 3 feet of it without my watch stopping. I even called a priest once, back in the 90s, Father Bergman from St. Joseph's. He came up here, said some prayers, sprinkled holy water. The clock kept ticking. The girl said it wants to be wound. I'm not touching that thing, Earl said firmly. Neither are you. We don't know what would happen if someone tried. But if it winds down completely, then we'll be erased. I know. I've known for years. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. But maybe that's better than the alternative. What alternative? Before he could answer, the front door opened. A man walked in, maybe 35, wearing a University of Wisconsin hoodie and carrying the duffel bag. He looked around the lobby with the kind of critical assessment people use when they're not sure they're in the right place. Is this the Old Baraboo Inn? He asked. Yes, sir, I said automatically. Checking in? Yeah, I made a reservation online. Name's Webb, Andrew Webb. I pulled up the reservation system. There he was, Andrew Webb, one night, room 5. But something was wrong with the entry. The reservation date showed March 11th, 2019. Mr. Webb, can I ask what date you made this reservation? Last week, March 4th. Why? And today's date is... He pulled out his phone. March 11th, Monday. He showed me the screen. It clearly displayed March 11th, 2019. Earl stood up slowly. Sir, I'm sorry, but there's been a mistake with our reservation system. We're actually fully booked tonight. That's not possible. I got a confirmation you now. Webb pulled out his phone again, scrolling through messages. I looked at Earl. He was staring at Webb with an expression I couldn't read. Then I understood. This was the moment. The moment someone crossed over from their time into the inn's time. The moment the trap closed. We can refund your payment, Earl said. His voice had that careful, controlled quality people use when they're trying to stay calm. And I can recommend a hotel in Wisconsin Dells only about 30 minutes from here. Webb frowned. Look, I drove 2 hours to get here. I'm not driving another 30 minutes. Just give me a room. Sir. I'm a paying customer. I have a reservation. Give me a room. His voice had taken on an edge, frustration bleeding through. Earl looked at me. A long, heavy look. Then he nodded slightly. I felt my hands move across the keyboard without conscious thought. Pulling up Webb's reservation, assigning him to room 5, printing his receipt. All the while, my brain was screaming at me to stop, to tell him to leave, to run while he still could. But I just smiled and said, Room 5, Mr. Webb. Checkout is at 11 a.m. He took the key and headed upstairs. Earl and I watched him go. Why did you let him check in? I whispered. Because if we'd turned him away, he would have come back tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Once the inn has you in its system, once your name is in that reservation list, it doesn't let go. Better he learns the truth now than after he's driven here 50 times, wondering why he can't stay away. Earl picked up his folder. He'll check out tomorrow morning thinking he stayed one night. In our time, it'll be 5 years. Same as that woman you met your first week. We have to do something, I said. We have to fix this. There's nothing to fix. There's only accepting it. He started walking toward the office, then stopped. Don't go back to the attic. Don't try to touch that clock. Some things are better left alone. After he left, I sat at the desk and tried to think. Tried to come up with a plan. But every thought felt slippery, hard to hold on to. I kept losing my train of thought, forgetting what I'd been thinking about seconds before. My phone buzzed. Jamie. Still alive? You've been super quiet. I looked at our text thread. The last message I'd sent was 2 days ago, but that couldn't be right. I'd texted her this morning. Hadn't I? Yeah, just busy. I typed back. You sound weird. You okay? I started typing, I'm fine, but stopped. Was I fine? I couldn't remember eating today, couldn't remember sleeping, couldn't remember. What day was it? Saturday? Sunday? My phone said, Sunday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. But that didn't seem right. I opened my photos. The last picture I'd taken was yesterday in the library. Photos of Theodore Klein's advertisement, of the articles about the lightning strike. I scrolled through them, looking at the dates. March 16th, 2024. Today was March 17th, 2024. One day. I'd only been working here for one more day. So why did it feel like a week? Why did I feel so tired, so worn down, like I'd been working for months? I stood up and walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass. The parking lot looked different, more empty. My Subaru was still there, but it was covered in a layer of grime, like it hadn't been driven in a while, and there was something else. Something off about the way the shadows fell, like the angle of the sun was wrong for this time of night. Movement in the reflection caught my eye. Someone standing behind me again. But this time, when I turned around, there was someone actually there. Thomas Hennig. He stood in the middle of the lobby, wearing that same outdated suit. But he looked different now, more solid, more real. He was holding something in his hands, a leather-bound book, old and worn. You're still here, I said, but Earl said you checked out, said you walked away. I did, Hennig said, for a while, but you can't really leave, not after you've been here long enough. The inn pulls you back, like a tide. He walked toward me and set the book on the desk. This is Theodore Klein's journal. I found it in room 14 after he died. Been carrying it around for 37 years, reading it over and over, trying to understand. I opened the journal. The handwriting was tight and cramped, filling every inch of every page. The first entry was dated September 1921. Purchased the clock mechanism from a dealer in Prague, who claimed it was built by Rabbi Loew in the 16th century, the same man who created the golem. It is said to be a temporal anchor, capable of fixing a moment in time or allowing passage between moments. I have spent 2 years learning to operate it. The Ringling brothers have shown interest in incorporating it into my act. I flipped through more pages, entries about performances, about audiences losing time, about people claiming they'd lived entire lifetimes during his hour-long shows, only to return to their seats with no memory of where they'd been. Then, dated June 1922. I have made a terrible mistake. The clock is not a tool. It is alive in its own way. It hungers. It feeds on temporal energy, on the moments we lose to distraction or sleep or forgetting. Every time I wind it, it grows stronger, more aware. I fear what will happen if I allow it to fully wake. The final entry was January 14th, 1963. I am dying. I can feel it in my chest, in my bones. The doctors say my heart is failing, but I know the truth. The clock has been feeding on me for 40 years, slowly draining my life force to power its mechanisms. I have stored it in the attic of this inn, hoping the building's old circus connections will contain it somehow. If you are reading this, I beg you, do not wind the clock. Do not attempt to repair it. Let it run down naturally. Let it sleep. For all our sakes, let it sleep. I looked up at Hennig. The lightning strike woke it up. More than that, it broke something inside the mechanism, made it ravenous. Now it's not just feeding on individual moments. It's trapping entire timelines, entire lives, storing them up like batteries. He pointed to the journal's last page, where Klein had drawn a detailed diagram of the clock's inner workings. There's a way to shut it down, to release all the trapped time at once, but it requires someone to manually stop the central gear at exactly the right moment. When? 3:47 a.m. When the lightning struck. That's when the clock is most vulnerable, when it's trying to draw power from the moment of its own awakening. If you can stop it then, everything it stored will be released. Everyone trapped here will remember their lost time and be free. What happens to the person who stops it? Hennig's expression was grim. I don't know. Klein's journal doesn't say. The grandfather clock in the lobby suddenly chimed once. We both looked at it. The hands had moved. They now pointed to 3 a.m. 47 minutes until the window opened. 47 minutes to decide if I was brave enough or stupid enough to try. Hennig placed his hand on my shoulder. Unlike the figure in the reflection, I could feel this. Solid and real and cold. You don't have to do this. You can walk away. Leave tonight. Don't come back. What about everyone else? What about you? The little girl? All the guests? We're already lost, have been for a long time, but you still have a chance. He squeezed my shoulder once, then let go. Choose wisely, Tyler. Some prisons are easier to escape than others. He turned and walked toward the stairs. I watched him climb up to the second floor, back to room 14, back to his endless loop of checking in and checking out and never really leaving. I looked at the clock. 3:07 a.m. 40 minutes. I picked up Theodore Klein's journal and headed for the attic ladder. The attic was different at night, colder. The shadows moved wrong, bending around corners that shouldn't exist. My phone's flashlight cut through the darkness in a narrow beam that seemed to be swallowed by something hungry just beyond its reach. The 7-faced clock sat in the corner where I'd left it. But now all 7 faces were moving. Not just ticking, racing. The hands spun forward and backward, the gears inside grinding and clicking with a sound like thousands of insects skittering across glass. The humming I'd felt before was louder now, resonating in my skull, making my teeth ache. I checked my phone. 3:14 a.m., 33 minutes. According to Klein's diagram, I needed to reach between the clock faces and grip the central gear, the one that connected all 7 smaller mechanisms. At exactly 3:47 a.m., I'd have to force it to stop, to hold it frozen while the clock tried to draw power from the anniversary of the lightning strike. Simple. Except the space between the clock faces was barely wide enough for my arm, and the diagram showed dozens of other gears spinning around the central one, each with teeth sharp enough to tear flesh. I set the journal down on a wooden crate and approached the clock. The closer I got, the worse I felt. My watch ran backward, then forward, then stopped entirely. My phone screen glitched, showing dates that hadn't happened yet. March 18th, 2024. March 19th. March 20th. Then backward, March 15th. March 10th. January 2023. I stopped 3 feet away. The air here felt thick, resistant, like trying to walk through water. I pushed forward and felt something push back. Not physically, but temporally I was moving through compressed time, through decades of trapped moments layered on top of each other. 2 feet away. My reflection appeared in the brass fittings of the clock. But it wasn't just my reflection. Behind me stood dozens of people. Hundreds, maybe. All the guests who'd ever been trapped here. All watching. Thomas Hennig. The little girl. Earl, looking young and frightened. Others I didn't recognize. All of them waiting. 1 foot away. The heat from the spinning gears washed over me. Or was it cold? I couldn't tell anymore. My skin felt like it was burning and freezing at the same time. I reached out my hand. The moment my fingers touched the brass casing, the attic disappeared. I was standing in the lobby. But it was different. Older. The wallpaper was a different pattern, the furniture was Victorian, and gas lamps burned in sconces on the walls. A man stood at the front desk, young, maybe 25, with a handlebar mustache and suspenders. He was writing in a leather guest book. Theodore Klein. I recognized him from the newspaper photograph. He looked up at me, and for a moment, our eyes met across a century. He smiled sadly, set down his pen, and spoke. His words came out wrong, layered, like multiple voices speaking the same sentence at different speeds. You shouldn't have touched it. The scene shifted. Now I was in room 14. The Dietrichs sat on the bed, frozen mid-conversation, their mouths open, their hands raised. But they weren't moving, not frozen in time, frozen between times, suspended in the space between seconds. Shift again. The third-floor hallway. The little girl stood there, but she wasn't alone. A man and woman stood beside her. Her parents, I realized. They looked young, early 30s. The woman was reaching for the girl's hand, but the girl couldn't reach back. She was crying silently, stretching toward them but unable to close the gap. Another shift. Earl in the lobby, 1987, checking in Thomas Hennig. Both of them looked so young, so alive. Earl laughed at something Hennig said. Neither of them knew what was about to happen. Neither of them knew they'd be trapped here for decades. The visions came faster now, overlapping, bleeding into each other. I saw every guest who'd ever stayed here, every person who'd lost time. Their faces flashed past like cards being shuffled. A businessman from the 40s, a family from the 60s, teenagers from the 80s, the woman from 2019, Andrew Webb, dozens more I didn't recognize. And I understood. The clock wasn't just trapping them, it was preserving them, storing their lost moments in its gears like specimens in amber, keeping them alive in a state of temporal suspension. If I stopped the clock, I'd release them. But I'd also destroy the only thing keeping them from being completely erased. I pulled my hand back and snapped into the present. The attic, the clock. 3:29 a.m., 18 minutes. I looked at the journal again, at Clown's final words. Let it sleep. But he'd written that before the lightning strike, before the clock had been damaged and broken open. It wasn't sleeping anymore. It was awake and feeding, and it would keep feeding until there was nothing left. I had to try. I reached into the gap between the clock faces. The space was tighter than it looked, and immediately I felt resistance. Not physical resistance. Time itself was pushing against me, trying to keep me out. My hand aged as I pushed deeper. I watched my skin wrinkle, the veins standing out, liver spots appearing. Then it reversed, my hand becoming smooth and young, almost childlike. My fingers found the edge of the central gear. It was hot to the touch, vibrating with accumulated temporal energy. The moment I gripped it, pain shot up my arm. Not pain like burning or cutting, but pain like existing in too many moments at once. I felt myself at 5 years old, at 15, at 23, at 40, at 60, at 80, all simultaneously, all occupying the same space. I screamed, but the sound came out fractured, echoing across decades. The clock fought back. The gears around the central one spun faster, their teeth catching my sleeve, tearing fabric. One of them nicked my forearm, and I watched the cut appear, heal, scar over, and disappear in the span of a heartbeat. 3:38 a.m., 9 minutes. I could feel the clock pulling at me now, trying to trap me the way it had trapped everyone else. It wanted to add my time to its collection, to store me in its gears alongside Thomas Hennig and the little girl and all the others. But I held on. Behind me, I heard footsteps on the attic ladder. Someone was coming up. The steps were heavy, adult. "Tyler," Earl's voice. "Tyler, stop. You don't know what you're doing." I didn't turn around, couldn't. If I let go now, I'd never get my hand back in position. "The clock needs to wind down naturally," Earl said. He was closer now. I could hear him moving through the attic toward me. "If you force it to stop, the temporal backlash could destroy everything. Not just the inn. Everything. The whole town. Maybe more." "Klein's journal says..." Klein was guessing. He didn't know what would happen. No one does. Earl's hand landed on my shoulder. "Let go, please. Some people are meant to be trapped. Some moments are meant to be lost. That's just how time works." I looked at him. In the dim light from my phone, I could see his face properly. See the way the years had and hadn't touched him. He looked 40, but his eyes were ancient. "You don't want to be saved," I said. He didn't answer. Didn't have to. After 37 years of forgetting who you were, of losing your name and face and memories piece by piece, maybe the idea of getting it all back at once was more terrifying than staying lost. "I had a daughter," he said quietly. "I remember now. Looking at you, trying to save everyone. It made me remember. Her name was Christina. She was 6 years old the night of the lightning strike. I was supposed to go home after my shift. Instead, I got trapped here. She grew up without me. She's probably in her 40s now. Maybe has kids of her own. And if you release me, if you give me back those 37 years, I'll remember every missed birthday, every Christmas I wasn't there for, every moment I should have been a father and wasn't. Is that really a kindness?" 3:43 a.m. 4 minutes. "What about the little girl?" I asked. "What about Thomas Hennig? What about all the others who want to be free? They think they want to be free, but they don't remember what they're going back to. They don't remember how much time has passed. The world they knew is gone. That's not your choice to make." I tightened my grip on the central gear and started to pull. Earl grabbed my other arm, trying to stop me, but I shoved him back with my elbow. He stumbled, caught himself on a box. 3:45 a.m. The clock's humming reached a fever pitch. All 7 faces aligned, their hands pointing straight up. Midnight, or noon. The moment between moments. I felt something building in the mechanism. Power. Vast and terrible. The lightning strike had opened the clock, but it opened it at 3:47 a.m., and that specific moment had become a recurring wound in time, a point where the clock could draw infinite energy from its own awakening. 3:46 a.m. The attic filled with light. Not natural light, temporal light. I could see through it, see every version of this moment playing out simultaneously. Versions where I succeeded. Versions where I failed. Versions where I never came up here at all. In one version, I stopped the clock and everyone was freed, stumbling out of the inn confused and disoriented but alive. In another version, I stopped the clock, and the temporal backlash ripped a hole in reality, swallowing the entire building. In another version, I let go and walked away and spent the rest of my life wondering what might have happened. In another version, I became guest 12, trapped forever in room 12. Another name in the registry with no checkout date. All of them real. All of them possible. all of them waiting to collapse into a single reality the moment the clock struck 3:47. The gear in my hand vibrated so hard I thought my bones would crack. My phone flashed. 3:47 a.m. Now. I pulled with everything I had. The gear resisted, fighting against decades of accumulated temporal momentum. But I pulled harder, feeling muscles tearing my shoulder, feeling something in my wrist snap. The gear stopped. For one perfect, crystalline moment, everything stopped. The humming ceased. The vibration ended. The light vanished. Complete silence. Complete stillness. Then time came crashing back. The explosion wasn't physical. It was temporal. A shockwave of released time expanding outward from the clock, washing through the attic, through the building, maybe through all of Baraboo. I felt it pass through me like a wave of ice water, and suddenly I could remember things I'd forgotten. Things the inn had been slowly stealing from me. I remembered texting Janely 3 days ago, not 2. Remembered sleeping through entire afternoons and waking up convinced only minutes had passed. Remembered Earl checking in guests I'd never seen arrive, their names appearing in the registry like ghosts. The clock's 7 faces went dark. The gears stopped spinning. The humming died completely. In the sudden silence, I heard screaming from downstairs. Dozens of voices, all crying out at once. I pulled my hand free. It was bruised and bleeding, aged in patches where the gears had caught me, and ran for the ladder. Earl was still on the floor where I'd pushed him, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Christina," he whispered. She needed braces. I was saving up for braces. She had my mother's smile. Tears ran down his face. 37 years. She's 43 years old now. My little girl is 43. I climbed down the ladder and ran to the second floor. Doors were opening. Guests were stumbling into the hallway, looking around in confusion and horror. Thomas Hennig stood in the doorway of room 14, gripping the frame like he might collapse. "I died," he said, staring at his own hands. "I died 2 weeks ago. I remember dying. But I've been here. I've been trapped here since 1987. How is that possible?" The Dietrichs emerged from room 6. The woman was sobbing, clutching her husband. "Our daughter's wedding. We missed our daughter's wedding. We've missed 5 years. She'll be pregnant by now. We'll have grandchildren we've never met." More doors. More people. Some I recognized, some I didn't. A teenage girl who'd been missing since 1992. A man who'd checked in during the Carter administration. An elderly woman who remembered Eisenhower being president. All of them flooding into the hallway, their faces twisted with the agony of remembering, of having decades of stolen time crash back into their consciousness at once. Andrew Webb came out of room 5, his face pale. "What year is it?" he demanded. "Someone tell me what year it is." 2024, I said. "March 17th, 2024. He staggered, caught himself against the wall. 5 years. You kept me here for 5 years. He looked at me with pure hatred. I had a job. I had a girlfriend. I had a life. What the hell did you people do to me? I wanted to tell him it wasn't my fault, that I just started working here, that I'd tried to save them all. But he was right to be angry. They all were. 5 years, 37 years, 40 years. How do you give someone back that kind of time? How do you apologize for decades? The little girl appeared at the end of the hallway, but she wasn't alone anymore. Her parents stood with her, solid and real. Her mother was crying, holding the girl close, saying her name over and over. Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. The girl, Sarah, looked up at me. "Thank you," she said, then quieter. "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" She didn't answer, just pressed her face into her mother's shoulder and wept. More people were coming out of rooms now, filling the hallway, the stairs. Some were running for the exit, desperate to escape. Others stood frozen, trying to process decades of lost memories. A few were on their phones, calling family members who'd given up hope years ago. Mom, it's me. I know. I'm so sorry. I don't know where I've been. Mom, please don't hang up. Jennifer? It's Dad. I know you think I'm dead. I don't understand it either. But I'm here. I'm alive. I need you to come get me. Is this the Baraboo police? I need to report. I don't know. A kidnapping? No, not a kidnapping. I don't know what to call it. I've lost 5 years. The third-floor landing creaked. I looked up and saw more people coming down. 20, maybe 30. People from decades past, all of them released at once. The building was packed with souls who'd been trapped in its gears, and now they were all trying to leave simultaneously. Earl appeared at the top of the stairs. He'd aged, not physically, but in the way he carried himself. The weight of 37 years of memories had settled on his shoulders all at once, and he looked crushed beneath it. "We need to get everyone out," he said. His voice was rough, broken. "Building's not stable. Can you feel it?" I could. The inn was shaking. Not violently, but constantly, like an earthquake in slow motion. Pictures rattled on walls. Floorboards groaned. Somewhere above us, wood cracked. What's happening? The clock was holding the building together. Temporarily, I mean. This place should have been condemned 20 years ago, but the clock kept it frozen in 1987. Now that it's stopped, 40 years of decay are happening at once. Plaster dust fell from the ceiling. A window on the second floor shattered spontaneously. "Everyone out!" I shouted. "Now! The building's coming down!" People ran, down the stairs, through the lobby, out into the parking lot. Some were limping, disoriented. Others helped them, strangers supporting strangers, bound together by shared trauma. I made sure the second floor was clear, then headed down. Earl was still in the lobby, standing behind the front desk like he'd done for 37 years. He was looking at the grandfather clock, which now showed the correct time, 3:53 a.m. "You should go," I said. "Where?" "I don't have a home anymore. Don't have a family. My wife probably remarried. My daughter grew up thinking I abandoned her." He laughed bitterly. "What am I supposed to do? Show up on her doorstep and say, 'Hi, honey. Sorry I missed the last 4 decades. But I was trapped in a haunted hotel.' You don't know until you try." Another crack from above. Louder this time. Chunks of ceiling fell, crashing onto the stairs. "Earl, we have to go." He nodded slowly, then reached under the desk and pulled out a gas can. The smell of gasoline hit me immediately. "What are you doing?" "Finishing it." He started unscrewing the cap. The clock might be stopped, but it's not destroyed. As long as it exists, someone could restart it, could trap people all over again. I've been planning this for years, just never had the courage. You can't? Yes, I can. Someone has to make sure this never happens again. He poured gasoline across the desk, the floor, the base of the stairs. The fumes made my eyes water. Get everyone away from the building. Far away. And Tyler. He looked at me. Don't work night shifts anymore. Nothing good happens between midnight and dawn. I ran for the door. Outside, the parking lot was chaos. 40 or 50 people, all disoriented, all traumatized, all demanding answers nobody could give them. Some were on phones. Others were just sitting on the pavement, staring at nothing. Thomas Hennig stood near my Subaru, talking on a borrowed cell phone. "Jennifer, I know this is insane, I know. But I need you to drive to the Old Baraboo Inn on Highway 12 now. Please." Sarah sat with her parents in their car, the three of them holding each other and crying. Her father looked younger than Earl, maybe mid-50s. They've been trapped for nearly 40 years, but the clock had preserved them perfectly, keeping them the same age they'd been in 1985. I was counting heads, making sure everyone was out, when the first window blew out. Flames appeared in the lobby, orange and hungry. They spread fast, feeding on decades of old wood and vintage furniture. People backed away from the building, forming a wide circle in the parking lot. We watched the Old Baraboo Inn burn. Sirens approached from town. Fire trucks, police cars, ambulances. Someone must have called 911. I didn't know what we'd tell them. Didn't know how to explain any of this. Earl never came out. I kept watching the door, hoping to see him emerge through the smoke. But he didn't. He'd chosen to burn with the building, with the job that had defined him for 37 stolen years. The attic roof collapsed inward with a sound like thunder. Somewhere in that wreckage, Theodore Klein's seven-faced clock was being destroyed, its gears melting, its faces cracking, its hunger finally satisfied. Andrew Webb appeared next to me, still pale, still shaking. "I need to call my girlfriend," he said. "Except she's probably not my girlfriend anymore. How do I explain this to her? How do I tell her I'm 5 years older than I was 3 days ago?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Did you do this? Did you free us?" I stopped the clock, yes. He was quiet for a moment, watching the fire. Then, "Thank you, I think. I don't know if I'm grateful or angry or what. But thank you." The sun was starting to rise, turning the smoke pink and gold. First responders arrived, and suddenly we were all being separated, questioned, wrapped in blankets and loaded into ambulances despite most of us insisting we were fine. I ended up sitting in the back of an ambulance with a paramedic checking my injured hand. The wrist was definitely broken. The cuts from the gears were deep, would need stitches, but I'd live. Through the ambulance doors, I could see the inn's skeleton against the dawn sky. Just blackened beams and crumbling brick. By noon, it would be nothing but ash. A woman in a police uniform approached. "You're Tyler Gunderson? You worked here?" "For 3 weeks, I think. Maybe it was longer." Time got weird toward the end. She frowned, making notes. "We're going to need a full statement. We've got over 40 people claiming they were held here against their will for various lengths of time, but none of them can explain how. And we found remains in the fire. An adult male. Any idea who that might be?" "Earl Novak," I said. "The manager. He saved us all." "How?" I looked at the ruins, at the displaced people, at the impossible situation we were all trying to make sense of. "I don't think you'd believe me if I told you. I'm back in Madison now, working at a coffee shop on State Street. The wrist healed crooked. I can't make a proper fist anymore, but that's a small price to pay for still existing. For not becoming guest 12, trapped forever in a registry with no checkout date. The news covered the Old Baraboo Inn fire for about a week. They called it a mass kidnapping case, though nobody could explain the mechanics of how people had been held. The FBI got involved. Psychologists tried to explain it as shared delusion or mass psychosis. Some people claimed it was a cult. The real explanation, a 16th century temporal device built by Rabbi Lowe and weaponized by a circus magician, never made it past the crazy local rumors category. Most of the freed guests are still trying to rebuild. Thomas Hennig's daughter came to pick him up that morning. I watched them meet in the parking lot. Her middle-aged and cautious, him looking exactly as he had in 1987. They stood 5 feet apart for almost a minute, just staring at each other. Then she started crying and ran to him, and they held each other while the inn burned behind them. Sarah's family moved away from Wisconsin entirely. Last I heard, they were trying to start over somewhere in Oregon, away from any reminders of the 40 years they'd lost. Her parents looked young enough to be mistaken for her older siblings. They'll never get those decades back, but at least they have a future now. Andrew Webb sent me a message last week through Facebook. His girlfriend had moved on, gotten married, had a kid. His job no longer existed. The company had been bought out and restructured. But he was alive. He was free. He was learning to live in 2024 instead of 2019. "Some days I hate you for stopping that clock," he wrote. "Most days I'm grateful today is a grateful day. I drive past where the inn used to stand sometimes. The lot's been cleared, the rubble hauled away. There's a chain-link fence around the property and a for sale sign that's been there since April nobody's buying. Nobody wants to build on that ground. I met with a physics professor from UW-Madison, showed her Theodore Klein's journal and the photos I'd taken of the clock. She spent 2 days studying them, then handed everything back with shaking hands. "This shouldn't be possible," she said. "The energy required to trap time like this would be astronomical. The mathematics don't work. Unless..." She trailed off, looking disturbed. "Unless space-time is far more malleable than we thought, which would mean there could be other devices like this, other places where time doesn't work right. I think about Earl sometimes, about his choice to burn with the building, to ensure the clock was destroyed, about how he could have walked away, could have tried to reconnect with Christina, but chose to end it instead. Maybe he was right. Maybe some losses are too great to come back from. Jamie asks why I won't work nights anymore, why I insist on day shifts only, even though they pay less. I tell her I like seeing the sun, tell her I need regular sleep. Both true, but not the whole truth. The whole truth is that between midnight and dawn, reality gets thin. Rules stop working the way they should. And if there was one clock that could trap time, who's to say there aren't others? I still have dreams about the inn, about the 7-faced clock ticking in the attic, its gears grinding through stolen years, about Earl standing at the front desk, checking in guests who will never leave, about the little girl in the white nightgown, asking what year it is. But then I wake up. I check my phone, verify the date matches my memories, and go to work where the hours pass normally and time behaves the way it should. Most days, that's enough. Most days, I don't think about what happens in the places where time forgets to follow its own rules. Most days,